Hi everyone, welcome back to Creatively Crafted Life. This is Melanie, and today I am going to share with you the layouts that I completed during the International National Scrapbook Day on May, I think it was May 4th, and I did not actually do any process videos on any of these. I just couldn't get started at first. The mojo wasn't there, and then once I did get going, I just didn't even think about recording anything. So this is going to be the next best thing, as I will just show you what I did. So in the one day, I managed to complete, I think it was 14 12 by 12 pages. A lot of these are double page spreads, and I used stuff from my stash. So you'll see a lot of stuff from the On Trend 2 collection from, I think it's My Mind's Eye, and I used a Hip Kit Club from June 2018. So let's get started and let me lay out the first design. So this is a 2-page spread using a lot of the Pink Fresh Simple and Sweet collection. The June 2018 collection or kit from Hip Kit had a lot of those products in there, and then I think I had a few other items in my stash that I just pulled out to supplement. Basically, this was back in 2010. I did a work trip out to Ontario, Canada, and I had to stay the weekend, and so I did a little bit of exploring and I went out to the beach, and that's what this is. So it is a 2-page spread. I did use a sketch for this one, and I managed to get, what, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 photos on this page. So I had a lot of product left over, and I just was really struggling with what was left in the kit. I don't know why, but there was a package of flower ephemera from Pretty Little Studio, and I thought that would work really well with this layout here of the wedding of a couple of my friends. I have as the background, and I don't know if you can see this, this is some Stampin' Up! Embossed resist paper. I think this might have been a celebration freebie. So all I did was I just added a little bit of ink, sponging on it just to kind of frame out the photos, and then I just pretty much used almost the whole pack of ephemera to add the floral pieces along the edge and then up over on the right hand side, and then I just used some puffy stickers that I had in my stash to supplement that. So the next set of pictures all go together and will go in an album as a grouping. Also from 2010, I had come to California actually for a work trip, and I had spent the weekend exploring, and one of the places I went to was a place called the Huntington Library and Gardens. And so what you're going to see here is a lot of the On Trend 2 collection, and while they're not necessarily a 2-page spread like this, this is how it will look in my album. So I thought I would display it this way. I think I pretty much only used the collection. I think everything here is from that. I didn't do anything really fancy on this page. It's just a basic layout. I used a sketch again for this, and I managed to get 4 photos on the one page, so I'm quite happy with that. This one here, I really loved this photo, the way it looked with the gazebo in the back, but I also really loved the picture of the gazebo when it was up close, so I thought this would be a good way to kind of reference what the setting is of the gazebo and the gazebo itself. And this is just, it's such a pretty garden. If you ever are in Southern California near Pasadena, this is definitely one of the top places, I think, to go, especially if you love gardens. Okay, so one of the things about the Huntington Library and Gardens is that there are different gardens within the larger garden, and one of the areas is the desert garden. It's about 10 acres, I believe, but don't quote me on that. So it's quite large, and it is filled with all sort of cacti and succulents. It's really, really quite beautiful. And so this is a 2-page spread just of some of the photos that I took of the cactus garden. There really isn't a ton of journaling, but This is the reason why I actually chose the On Trend 2 collection to use for these photos, because they did have some of the different cacti ephemera pieces. And the colors just kind of work if you think about it, or if you look at it, the greens and the purpley pinks and stuff like that are all throughout here. So I think this goes really well, and I'm quite pleased with how this turned out. So not a 2-page spread, but again, this is how they will appear in my album. I took some photos of the lily ponds. Again, this is a very simple layout. It's just 4 photos in a grid. I used the background paper as the jumping off point, so I didn't think it needed much more, and then just added a few embellishments. The jungle garden is not terribly large at the Huntington, but it is quite pretty, and there is a waterfall, and there's something about water that just kind of draws you in, isn't there? So I just used a bunch of different pattern papers to help differentiate between them, because it is quite busy. I did draw some little black borders. I find that helps to separate from the busyness. So they have a fabulous rose garden. It's so beautiful. And at this time of the year when I went, this was in April, the roses were just amazing, and I took hundreds of photos, so it was really hard to narrow them down, but I decided to narrow them down to, I guess it was, what is it, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and I really like how it frames the tea house that's kind of near the rose garden. On this page here, if you have watched my video showing my flip through of my South American album that I just did recently, I did a similar layout with a grid system, and then I just did some little doodly borders around it. I really liked how that turned out, and so I was inspired by that for this page here. So I did something a little bit different here than I normally do for what I consider a 2-page spread. Often when I do a 2-page spread, I like to continue elements over both pages in order to give you that visual connection that the 2 pages are supposed to go together. In this case, this did not start out as a 2-page spread. It started out as a single page, which I was just going to call a Japanese garden. Or actually, I was just going to call it Japanese garden. I wasn't even going to put the letter A in front. And then I had a bunch of other photos left over from the garden where they had the bonsai trees and stuff. And I thought, why don't I just make this a 2-page spread and call it Elements of a Japanese Garden? And I really like how this turned out, even though it's not my normal kind of go-to. It's almost monochromatic in that I just used this really dark navy that was in the collection, and that was done intentionally because the pattern paper with this foiling on it didn't have any other colors. I just couldn't find a way to incorporate the other ones in a way that I liked, and I think this just makes it look a little bit more elegant, which I think a Japanese garden is. It tends to be a very elegant type of garden. So again, I managed to get a lot of photos on the 2 pages. I have 6 photos on this side, and I have 5 on this side. So at this point, I was starting to run out of products from the On Trend 2 collection. I did not have very much pattern paper left. So I did want to continue this through to finish this story, I guess, for lack of a better word, off. And so what I ended up doing was I pulled some more of that resist paper from my stash. So this is that Stampin' Up! Resist paper. And I just added some distress ink over top of it to kind of frame this out in somewhat of the color that was in the collection. I had a few, I still had a lot of ephemera pieces and some chipboard, so I used that to supplement this. Now this is very similar to other layouts that I just recently showed you. It's just the basic square grid and then just some decorations around that, and yet it doesn't look exactly the same. So don't be afraid to repeat things because the way that you end up embellishing it will make it look different. This side here is all about the conservatory, and I used a bunch of the chipboard pieces to finish this up, and I had just a little tiny bit of journaling. Now, I'm going to tell you something. You can't really see it very well here, but it is foiled, and I was able to write on the foil with a Sharpie marker. And when it's flat, it's very hard to read, but if you do tilt it, it is legible. So those are all the layouts that I did for the 2019 National Scrapbook Day. I hope you enjoyed, and until next time, happy crafting.